From the old movies of 30 years ago and beyond,
to the world of the new films of the last 30 years.
To the movies that are now playing, this is Old, New, and Now Playing. And now, here's your host, Will Robinson Smith.
Hello and welcome to Old, New, and Now Playing, your time machine through the world of movies. I'm your host, Will Robinson Smith. Thank you so much for joining me. And, sequels. You know, sometimes you get a really good one that ends up actually surpassing the original, like, say, Spider-Man 2, for instance. And then you get movies like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is just garbage. Staying in the franchise. So, which end of the spectrum will this movie end up on? I think it's time for a neural handshake and time to cancel the apocalypse. This is your feature presentation. Pacific Rim Uprising is the sequel to the 2013 movie Pacific Rim, which was written, directed, and produced by Guillermo del Toro. This time around, Del Toro is out as the writer and director, and the showrunner of the Marvel Netflix series Daredevil, Stephen DeKnight, is in. Del Toro did stick around as a producer, albeit one who was fairly hands-off at the request of DeKnight. The movie is set 10 years after the events of the first film. Oh, and let me go ahead and say up front that while I won't obviously be spoiling this movie, as far as the original Pacific Rim, that's totally fair game. There will be spoilers.
Major spoilers!
So I don't want to hear you complaining about that in the comments section. You've been warned. This is your warning. Spoiler alert for Pacific Rim. Anyway, let's get back to it. As I was saying, it's been a decade since the last movie, and this one focuses on Jake Pentecost, played by John Boyega, who's the son of Idris Elba's character in the first movie. Due to his father's sacrifice and prestige in the world, Jake feels a good bit of pressure to live up to that legacy. Now, wait a second. Hang on, sorry about this, but isn't that the exact same storyline that Jesse T. Usher's character went through in Independence Day Resurgence? You know what? I'm going to try something real quick, bear with me, but I'm going to describe either the plot of this movie or Independence Day Resurgence, and I want to see if you can figure out which one I'm talking about. Here we have a sequel set years after the original disaster movie took place. In the original, humanity is confronted with hostile aliens who cause widespread damage, who the humans eventually beat with teamwork and a bit of luck. In the sequel, the world is putting itself back together and improving its tech to prepare for the aliens' return, which catches them off guard. The sequel stars a young black man who is the son of a charismatic hero from the first movie and has a chip on his shoulder for being his father's son. One of the co-stars and a fellow pilot is a handsome white guy who is played by an actor who comes from an established acting family. The scientist from the original movie also makes a return and is still scared from his interactions with the aliens from the first movie. While being a bit of a B-movie, the original felt somewhat grounded and the effects added to the scope and drama of the movie. Meanwhile, the sequel feels overbloated with CGI that takes what the first one did and cranks it up to 11, and not in a positive way. So if you couldn't tell, I wasn't terribly enthralled with this movie, and I really wanted to like it. I thought certainly having John Boyega, with all his charm and charisma, could be a good leading man in this movie. And he was by no means the worst part of this, but he may have been one of the more disappointing aspects since, after seeing movies like The Force Awakens and Detroit, we know what he can do, and he just doesn't deliver here. His jokes don't always land, and he just wasn't what I was hoping for. The handsome white guy I was alluding to earlier is Scott Eastwood. And yes, I know you were going to ask, he is the son of Clint Eastwood. In fact, the two have actually appeared in a couple of films together, including Trouble with a Curve, and a couple of years prior to that, Gran Torino, when he actually went by his given name of Scott Reeves. By the way, side plug for the Gran Torino.
Side plug.
The movie actually came out back when I used to work in a movie theater, and I remember using some of my downtime to go in and watch it and really enjoying it. I mean, who doesn't love grumpy Clint Eastwood, right? But we're getting way off track. Eastwood is certainly good in other projects, but here he just felt kind of boring and forgettable. I don't know, maybe that's just a thing with the Pacific Rim movies, because if you take out Idris Elba, a lot of the characters don't really seem that wonderful or that relatable, engaging, if you will. But at least with the first movie, the mythology that was created and the way Del Toro executed the battle scenes and the lead up to them, it felt like a good monster movie with some humanity to it. In this movie, there's so much over-the-top action that I found myself a little bored at times when it should feel like a great spectacle when these alien and man-made monsters clash. Also, the significance of the neural handshake is majorly downplayed in this movie. They mention that it's not the easiest thing in the world to match with somebody, but as a story point, it doesn't have nearly as much weight as the original movie. And actually, jumping off of that point and moving to a positive of the movie, I guess technically this could be considered a minor spoiler.
Minor spoilers?
So if you really don't want to know, you can just skip to this time code down here. I'll catch up with you in just a second. Give you a second to make up your mind.
3.
To who? Who won?
Okay, so this movie introduces the idea of drone Jaegers, which sounds like it just makes a lot of sense, because then you could not have 2 human pilots risking their lives against these giant monsters out there in the world, but instead you could have a man or a woman in an office that's controlling a Jaeger from a safe distance. Just, it makes sense, right? Logic, woo! So, is this a good movie? No, I can't say that it is, but it's also not a steaming pile of garbage. Some of the visuals are pretty cool, and for a matinee or an early cheap screening, they are kind of neat to see on the big screen. But for all of the flaws, I can't really recommend this movie. And so I give Pacific Rim Uprising a 4 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on Pacific Rim Uprising. If you choose to see this movie, I want to know what you thought about it, and what's another one of your favorite alien invasion movies? Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments section below. I will say real quick, I'm betting Del Toro is feeling pretty good about his decision to make The Shape of Water instead of directing this movie. And that will do it for this Now Playing review. Hey, while you're here, go ahead and just click that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this review. That would be great. And while you're in the habit of clicking things, click that old subscribe button down below. Become a part of this channel. That way, you can keep up with all the goodness coming out in the very near future. And since we're talking about socials, head over to Facebook. Check out that Facebook group for Old, New, and Now Playing, where we'll be talking a whole lot more about upcoming movies, some TV shows maybe, a little bit of Netflix, all things like that. So thank you as always for joining me, watching these videos, and I will see you next time.